Herman Webster Mudgett is believed to be America's inaugural serial murderer. He possessed not only a dark disposition, but also intelligence, charisma, and wit. Operating in Englewood, Chicago, he constructed a ghastly structure known as the Murder Castle, where he dispatched his victims and disposed of their remains. Despite admitting to 27 killings, specialists speculate the true count could be in the hundreds, positioning Holmes as one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. Join us as we explore the mind of a sadistic murderer. These are the Cliff Notes for H. Holmes. Born into affluence in Gilmanton, New Hampshire, Mudgett faced multiple brushes with trouble during his youth. Nevertheless, he excelled academically. In 1878, he commenced his medical studies and wed Clara Lovering, the daughter of a wealthy farmer. While in college, he devised a method to extract cadavers from the laboratory, manipulating the scenes to mimic accidents and cashing in on insurance policies he had acquired for these relatives. His most substantial gain from this fraudulent scheme amounted to $12,500. Marriage to Clara did not work out, and she moved home. While he was moving to Chicago, he went from place to place, committing many insurance fraud scams. He took the alias Henry Howard Holmes to avoid detection and finally reached Chicago in 1885. Although he tried to file for divorce from Clara, the divorce proceedings failed. Nonetheless, he married a local woman in Chicago, Myrta Belknap. In the suburb of Englewood, a woman named Mrs. D. Holden owned a shop. Holmes answered her employment ad and got the job as a clerk. Holden and the customers loved him with his sense of humor and radiant charm. It seemed as though he was even attracting new customers to the store. For this reason, when Holden vanished one day, everyone was surprised. Holmes told police that he bought the store from her and she retired and left the area with no forwarding address. Some years after Holden's disappearance, Holmes brokered a deal to buy some land directly opposite his shop and began construction on a mixed-use 3-story building in 1887. The budding businessman appointed himself as the architect. Meanwhile, the 400th anniversary of Columbus' arrival in the New World was coming up in 1893. A massive celebration would take place at the Columbian Exposition World's Fair, just 3 miles from his new building. 27 million people from all over the world would flock to the city. Holmes planned to use his new building as a hotel because Chicago would become something of a boom town for the duration of the fair. It was called the World's Fair Hotel. Among the establishments he built on the building's lower level was a jewelry counter. Holmes enlisted the expertise of a skilled jeweler and watchmaker, Ned Connor, to assist in this endeavor. Connor arrived accompanied by his charming partner, Julia, and her daughter, Pearl. Holmes took an immediate interest in Julia, abruptly dismissing his current bookkeeper and appointing Julia to the position. A romantic connection blossomed between Julia and Holmes, leading to Connor leaving Julia, who subsequently retained custody of Pearl. Intriguingly, Julia and her daughter vanished in 1891. Holmes claimed that Julia had passed away from complications arising from an abortion. Historical records suggest that newspapers of the era likely sensationalized reports about the building, making the accuracy of the following description uncertain. Accounts indicated that Holmes' structure boasted 60 rooms and 51 doors, with the entire ground floor housing various stores and shops, including a drugstore cleverly disguised as a pharmacy. Given his past experience as a druggist, Holmes understood the usefulness of certain drugs. The building's layout was notably unconventional, with rooms positioned at irregular angles, some lacking windows and others featuring hidden trapdoors. Multiple staircases were concealed within walls, one leading to a steep drop into an alley behind the building. A chute provided direct access to the basement, where acid vats and pits filled with quicklime were situated alongside a surgical table. Furthermore, an incinerator was present for cremations. Holmes designated one upstairs room as his office, while further sinister features lurked concealed within the castle's wall. Certain guest rooms doubled as asphyxiation chambers, equipped with gas vents controlled by Holmes from his bedroom closet. Iron plates, asbestos lining and blowtorches were installed in other rooms, while each chamber was outfitted with an alarm system to prevent any potential escape. Additionally, he maintained a fully stocked surgical space, furnished with standard medical equipment alongside various items. Human remains, including numerous intact skeletons, were found within this area and scattered throughout the property. The hotel was prepared for operation by 1892, with Holmes promoting it in anticipation of the forthcoming World's Fair in the White City Center. In 1893, H. Holmes encountered a demure young woman named Minnie Williams. Unlike his previous partners, Minnie lacked striking beauty but inherited a substantial fortune in Texas real estate. Naive and possessing a childlike demeanor, she became an ideal target for Holmes. Exploiting her vulnerability, he hired Minnie as his secretary, eventually proposing marriage and swiftly maneuvering her into relinquishing her wealth and property to him. The couple resided together in an apartment, allowing Holmes ample opportunity to manipulate Minnie. Discovering she had a wealthy sister, Holmes urged Minnie to invite her for a visit. In July 1893, preparations were made for the sister, Nanny, to travel to Chicago. Holmes, alone, greeted her at the train station, deceitfully leading her to believe Minnie awaited them. Upon arrival at his building, Holmes employed his twisted methods to coerce Nanny into signing over her assets before swiftly disposing of her. Falsifying a letter to deceive Minnie about Nanny's departure, he covered his tracks. Later that year, Holmes took Minnie to Momence, Illinois, where he murdered her and buried her remains in a house basement. Discovering an insurance policy in Minnie's possession, Holmes discovered her brother had insured her life, with Minnie as the beneficiary. Driven by greed, Holmes traveled to Leadville, Colorado, and fatally shot Minnie's brother. He then forged Minnie's signature to collect the insurance payout. In October 1893, H. Holmes embarked on yet another scheme aimed at acquiring a substantial sum of money. He secured 4 fire insurance policies valued at $25,000 for his hotel. Although the fire ravaged the 3rd level, much of the 2nd floor remained intact and the ground floor businesses remained unscathed. Arson was suspected, prompting the insurance companies to question the legitimacy of the claims and ultimately refuse payment. Benjamin Pitzel, a longtime associate and confidant of Holmes, had collaborated on previous scams. Holmes devised another plan with Pitzel, involving an insurance policy on Pitzel's life with Carrie Pitzel, Ben's wife, as the beneficiary. Initially, Holmes obtained a $10,000 insurance policy. Subsequently, they intended to stage Pitzel's death, substituting a cadaver and splitting the proceeds. Due to Holmes's dubious reputation in Englewood, they had to procure the policy from an out-of-town insurer, Fidelity Mutual Life Association of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, they awaited their opportunity. Meanwhile, Holmes faced mounting financial pressure, owing nearly $50,000. The aftermath of the fire and an economic downturn exacerbated his predicament, with creditors demanding repayment. Furthermore, suspicions of insurance fraud surrounded Holmes, making it challenging for him to secure additional policies. In July 1894, Holmes, Pitzel, and Holmes's wife at the time, Georgiana Yoke, departed Chicago for Fort Worth, Texas, to liquidate Minnie's seized property. Their efforts with the property proved fruitless, leading them to engage in other fraudulent activities, including the theft of prized Texas bloodline horses. However, their actions attracted the attention of law enforcement, initiating a pursuit. Although apprehended in St. Louis, Holmes swiftly posted bail. During his brief incarceration, he formed a new scheme with his cellmate, Marion Hedgepeth, a notorious outlaw serving a 25-year sentence for train robbery. Holmes devised a plan to perpetrate insurance fraud amounting to $20,000 and sought the assistance of a corrupt lawyer. Hedgepeth provided the name of attorney Jephthah Howe in exchange for a fee. Howe found Holmes's scheme ingenious and agreed to collaborate. Holmes intended to stage his own demise and claim the insurance payout. Procuring a corpse, Holmes transported it to a beach in Rhode Island, setting it ablaze and leaving it for discovery. Before returning to a hotel under a new alias, he underwent a complete shave and altered his appearance. Upon learning of the discovery of the charred body, Holmes formally identified it as himself and attempted to collect the insurance. However, suspicions of fraud arose, leading the insurance company to deny payment. Holmes then returned to Chicago to focus on his scheme involving Pitzel. Holmes enlisted the help of both Ben Pitzel and Jephthah Howe. Pitzel and his wife Carrie relocated to Philadelphia, where they established a new shop selling patents under the alias B.F. Perry, a name Holmes used for another insurance policy. In Philadelphia, Pitzel ingested a potion to render himself unconscious, while Holmes applied makeup to simulate severe burn. They planned to convince an independent witness of Pitzel's demise before substituting him with a real corpse. Holmes promised Pitzel a share of the insurance proceeds for his cooperation. On September 4th, a nearby explosion alerted neighbors near the patent office, prompting a local resident to investigate. Upon discovering the locked doors and darkened interior, he promptly contacted the authorities. Responding officers forcibly entered the premises, uncovering a severely burned individual. Holmes had murdered Pitzel. While the insurance company deemed his death accidental, they required positive identification of the body before releasing the payout. Accompanied by Jephthah Howe and Pitzel's 15-year-old daughter, H. Holmes traveled to Pennsylvania. The distraught daughter recognized certain markings and dental features on Pitzel's body. As a result, the insurance company released the funds, with Howe retaining $2,500 of the payout. Holmes handed Carrie a mere $500, promptly reclaiming it under the guise of investment. Despite his role, Marion Hedgepeth received no compensation for his involvement in the scheme. In a stunning act of betrayal, Holmes ultimately murdered his co-conspirator. Holmes neglected to reach out to Hedgepeth once the plan was complete. Naturally, Hedgepeth didn't appreciate being ignored or the lack of payment. Hedgepeth held onto his inside knowledge for a brief period before ultimately deciding to inform on Holmes. Hedgepeth contacted local police officer Lawrence Harrigan. Subsequently, Philadelphia police detective Frank Geyer became involved in the investigation. Meanwhile, Holmes understood the urgency to flee. He concocted a series of falsehoods for Carrie, persuading her to accompany him and Georgiana eastward under false pretenses. Holmes assured Carrie that she would reunite with Ben, but that was never the intention. They journeyed from city to city until Holmes eventually instructed Carrie to continue without him. He planned to travel to Canada with 3 of her children while she went to meet Ben. In July 1895, Frank Geyer discovered the remains of Alice and Nellie Pitzel buried in the basement of a house that Holmes had leased in Toronto, Canada. Later, the remains of the 3rd child, 7-year-old Howard Pitzel, were found in a residence in Irvington, Indiana. Holmes had disposed of the parts by burning them in the stove. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, Fidelity Mutual Insurance had enlisted the renowned Pinkerton Agency, the most famous private investigators in the United States, to track down Holmes. Aware that detectives were monitoring his every move, Holmes evaded capture for 2 months. However, his luck ran out on November 17, 1894, when Holmes arrived at his parents' home in Boston and the Pinkertons promptly arrested him. The true horrors of H.H. Holmes's hotel were unveiled during the investigation. Accounts from the time, though possibly exaggerated, described a gruesome scene in the basement. Blood-stained dissecting tables stood alongside instruments of torture and gleaming surgical tools. A crematorium held the remains of human bones, including the charred ash and jewelry belonging to Minnie Williams. Among the ashes, investigators found a pelvic bone identified as that of Julia's daughter Pearl, tragically confirming her demise within the hotel. Further evidence of Julia's fate was discovered in the form of a blood-stained piece of her dress. The macabre scene continued with ribs and a skull floating in a vat of acid, while more skeletons lay in 2 pits on the floor. 3 additional skeletons positioned under the dissecting table were intended for sale to medical schools. In the early hours of August 19th, a series of explosions reverberated through the neighborhood. Within an hour, the roof collapsed, leading to the eventual crumbling of the walls. Amidst the debris lay a discarded gas can. Witnesses reported seeing 2 men enter the building and, half an hour later, hastily exiting. The community celebrated the destruction of the notorious murder castle. Holmes eventually admitted to his crimes, stating that he had murdered 27 individuals, although police could only verify 9 based on evidence found at the hotel. Some sources suggested his actual victim count could be as high as 200. The trial commenced shortly before Halloween in 1895 and concluded in less than a week. Allegedly, the jury took just 2 hours to reach a guilty verdict for the notorious White City murderer of Chicago. America's most infamous serial killer was executed by hanging at Moyamensing Prison on May 7, 1896. Afterward, he was interred at the Holy Cross Cemetery in Lansdowne, Pennsylvania. He had insisted on a concrete casket, fearing that his grave would be desecrated. Holmes would leave behind 3 spouses and 2 children, Robert Lovering Mudgett, the son of Clara Lovering, and Lucy Theodate Holmes, the daughter of Myrta Belknap. I'd like to take this time to pay my respects to the victims and all the families that were affected by these heinous acts on both sides. You deserved better and are forever in our prayers. May you rest in peace. In conclusion, the twisted mind of H.H. Holmes reminds us of the depths of human depravity. His ability to charm and manipulate, combined with his calculated cruelty, leaves a haunting legacy. Holmes serves as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance against evil, and the enduring fascination with his crimes underscores our eternal quest for understanding the darkest aspects of human nature. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more killer cliff notes, and I'll see you in the next one.